Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Daisy. For today's video, I will be reading my subscribers' spooky stories. So grab your snacks, grab your cobija, and let's get straight into it. Hi Daisy. This isn't something I experienced directly, but it changed my family forever. My family is from South Africa, and our family home is in the Eastern Cape. Witchcraft is quite common among the Xhosa tribe, and sadly, my family fell victim to it. My grandparents were very successful, especially considering our background, and that made them a target. A lot of people didn't, and still don't, like our family because of the empire my grandparents built. There has always been a lot of envy. My mom has many siblings, but one of them was affected the most. She told me that from a young age, her sister was tormented by known witches in their village. It started at night. Her sister would scream and say that they were trying to take her. She even named the women she believed were attacking her. My grandparents did everything they could to protect their home, but somehow these women always found ways to reach my late aunt. Over time, the attacks began happening during the day too. My aunt would sleepwalk and talk out loud, begging the witches to leave her alone. No one else could see them, but my aunt could. She used to be such a bubbly person, so full of life, but she passed away under very mysterious circumstances. In the days leading up to her death, she was acting strangely, like she wasn't herself anymore. It didn't make any sense. After her passing, my mom's brother saw her one night. He was terrified and ran to tell the rest of the family, but no one believed him. My aunt was buried behind our family home. We used to visit my grandparents every holiday, and I always felt this unsettling energy near her grave. The layout of my grandparents' property is a bit unusual. There's the main house, which has their bedroom. A short distance away, there's a second house where the grandkids sleep. Then off to the side, there's a row of separate rooms that my mom and her siblings used as teenagers. Just behind those rooms is where my aunt was buried. When my cousins and I were younger, we used to sleep in that row of rooms before our new ones were renovated. From my mom's old room, I could see my aunt's grave clearly through the window. One day, I was staring at her grave from that window, wondering what really happened to her. And suddenly, all the closet doors in the room burst open at once, as if a spirit had just passed through. I freaked out and ran to my grandparents. I didn't tell them what I saw because I didn't want to reopen that wound. A few days later, my cousin and I were talking about our aunt, sharing what we'd heard from our parents. That's when we heard a laugh. Not just any laugh, but something dark and heavy. It was confirmation that something much deeper had happened. When I got home from that holiday, I told my mom what had happened. She sat me down and told me the full story. What the family believes really happened. After her sister passed away, their cousin came home acting very strange. My mom's aunt even mentioned how off he seemed, like he wasn't himself. This behavior went on for a while, until he reportedly passed away. Here's the twist. After the cousin died, he suddenly showed up at home again. His mother was shocked. She already seen his body at the morgue, but he explained that witches had kidnapped him, shrunk him, and kept him in a closet. The person everyone saw and buried wasn't really him. It was a shapeshifter impersonating him. He somehow escaped and made it back home. When they searched for the clone, there was no sign of it, no trace left behind. My mom believes that the same thing might have happened to her sister. But unlike her cousin, there is no hope that her sister is still out there somewhere. They believe her soul, spirit, and being were eventually used up. This story has haunted me for years. Witchcraft is no joke. It can tear families apart and leave deep wounds that never heal. Hi Daisy, my name is Amik, but you can call me Ami. I'm from South Africa, and I've had many paranormal encounters. I've been watching your videos since day one, and finally decided to share one of my own. My whole family is very religious, but my mom was always different. She always had an interest in the paranormal, and always believed in it. Ever since I was little, I was drawn to her stories. I always wanted to know more. I think that curiosity might be the reason I became a target. The story takes place when I was in grade 1. We lived in a small complex with about 5 houses. It was a Saturday night, and my parents had invited friends and family over. Everyone was sitting at the back of the house while I was in the lounge playing with my toys. As I was playing, I heard 3 loud knocks at the door. I went to my mom and told her someone was at the door. She opened it, but no one was outside. Just a cold breeze. She shrugged it off and went back. A little while later, I heard the knocks again. This time, I opened it myself. And again, no one was there. Later that night, after everyone had left, I went to bed. I had always been a super light sleeper. So I woke up when I felt something tugging at my bedding. Let me explain the layout of my room. I had a single bed positioned directly across from my open bedroom door. My bed was in the corner, with windows behind me and my dresser across from the bed. When I woke up from the pulling sensation, I looked at my dresser and noticed strange shadows, as if light was shining through my curtains. It almost looked like it was morning, but something didn't feel right. I didn't even want to look at the window because I felt off. I knew I had closed the curtains before going to bed. Right as I was about to turn toward the window, I felt my pillows start sliding off my bed. And then they all dropped at once. It all happened so fast. I heard what sounded like a snake-like hiss, followed immediately by a scream. But it wasn't a normal scream. It sounded like someone blowing out their last breath, only in the form of a scream. I screamed too, and as fast as I could, I hid my whole body, head to toe, under my bedding. Everything went still, and just as I peeked through my blanket, I saw 2 tall black shadow figures walking toward my bed. I tucked my head back under my bedding, squeezing my eyes tightly closed. The shadow stuff was full on hitting me, making the weirdest noise I can't explain. So at this point, I started praying, and as I said amen, everything went away. I got up, ran to my mom, and told her what happened. She held me and said she heard everything. She even saw the shadow figures go into my room, but she couldn't help me because something had completely held her down. At the time, it was just me, my brother, my mom, and my dad living in the house. But only my mom and I could see and hear the things that happened there. Eventually, the activity became too much. We had no choice but to leave. Hi Daisy, my name is Joyce. A couple of years ago, I moved to Nicaragua to live with my grandmother. I lived there for about 3 years. Her house is known for having a very strange energy. Everyone who visits mentions that the atmosphere feels heavy. Several people have died in the house, both from natural and unnatural causes. Years ago, before I was born, a drunk man crashed his car into the garage wall and died instantly. A man was also murdered on the sidewalk in front of the house. Entierros, which are buried offerings or curses, were found in the backyard, supposedly placed by one of my grandfather's mistresses. But that's for another story. When I moved in, my uncle, his wife, my little cousin, and my grandmother were already living there. I was the only night owl in the house. Everyone else went to bed around 7 or 8 p.m., so I often stayed up alone in the kitchen or hallway at night. My room was isolated from the others. In the family, it was known as the pink room, and it has a reputation for being the most active. My great-grandfather, who supposedly had the gift of seeing spirits, lived in that room until he died. Before converting to Christianity, he used to play with the Ouija board and la tijerita in that room. At first, I tried to sleep there, but I started experiencing things that terrified me. I would wake up in the middle of the night to someone whispering my name, Joyce, clearly and directly into my ear. I would wake up startled. One night, I had just adopted a small puppy and stayed up until around 11 p.m. I was alone in the kitchen when suddenly I felt a heavy shift in the atmosphere. Something didn't feel right. I immediately grabbed my puppy, turned off the lights, and ran to my grandmother's room. She was already asleep, so I got into bed, prayed, and tried to calm myself. Her room has a window facing the hallway. My grandmother slept in the bed next to that window, and I slept in the other. The house was completely dark. Through the semi-transparent curtains, I could see no lights were on. That's when I heard a noise that sounded like footsteps, but not normal footsteps. It was the sound of dragging sandals, as if someone were walking without lifting their feet. The sound came from the front of the house and gradually got closer. My puppy, who had been sleeping under my bed, ran to the bedroom door and stood perfectly still. The steps stopped right in front of the door. I stood still as my heart was racing. My puppy just stared silently at the door, and after what felt like forever, the steps began again, this time moving away, dragging toward the backyard. I heard them reach the gate, and then they stopped, and suddenly they came back. That same dragging sandal sound returned, growing louder and closer, until it once again stopped right in front of the door. I didn't move. I barely even breathed, afraid that whatever it was might hear me. After a long silence, the steps began again, this time heading toward the front door, and then complete silence. The next morning, my puppy refused to go through the door. I had to carry him out. When I told my mom what had happened, she told me that the only person in the family who used to walk like that was my great-grandfather, the same one who lived and died in the pink room. Another night, I was sitting alone in the dining table, which faces the backyard. I was quietly eating dinner when I saw a figure walk past the hallway in the backyard. It was only a few meters from me. It didn't look at me. It just walked by. The figure was tall and thin, shaped like a person, but I couldn't see any facial features. It had no color. It looked like a cloud or mist, transparent with a faint gray tone. It simply walked past and vanished. More recently, something happened that gave me chills. My grandmother, who is elderly, was very ill. She has a pacemaker and underwent lung surgery. She was near death in the hospital, but by the grace of God, she survived and returned home. One night, after she had recovered and was already back at home, she woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't fall back asleep. So she sat up in bed. As I mentioned, her bed is next to the window facing the hallway. On the other side of that window is a small sofa. She heard two women murmuring right outside the window, as if they were sitting on that sofa. She stayed awake the rest of the night, too afraid to move. She was completely alone. My uncle's wife was away, and my uncle was asleep in another room. The next morning, as usual, my uncle got up around 5 a.m. to exercise, but that day, he let out a scream. At the door of my grandmother's bedroom was a dead bird, but not just any bird. It had its heart and one lung ripped out, as if someone had removed them intentionally. The house is full of stories, things I've seen, heard, and felt that I still can't explain. And I'm not the only one. Many others who have spent time there have their own paranormal experiences to share. Hi Daisy, this story is actually from my dad, and it still gives me goosebumps. Back when he was a kid, he lived in a small house in Las Cruces, New Mexico, with his family. One night, his parents went out dancing and left all the kids at home. It was my dad, 3 of my tios, and 2 tias. That night, around 9 or 10 p.m., one of my tios, let's call him Manuel, went outside to throw out the trash in their neighbor's yard. While he was out there, he saw something strange. The neighbors were elderly people, so it was weird when my tío saw something moving near their place. He ran inside and told everyone what he saw. They all rushed to the window to look, but none of them could see anything, except for my dad. My dad said he saw a black shadowy figure with a triangle-shaped head and something like an elephant trunk or horn coming from it. It scared him so much, he immediately called the neighbors to let them know someone strange was outside their house. The older man next door came over and asked my dad to walk with him to follow the weird tracks that were left in the ground. My dad agreed, grabbed his shoes and a flashlight, and they went off to check it out. As they followed the tracks, both of them felt a bad, heavy vibe. The tracks led them all the way to a small bridge nearby. The old man decided to look under the bridge to see if whatever it was might be hiding there. The moment he looked under, he collapsed to the ground. He had a heart attack right in front of my dad. My dad ran home and called the police. Rest his soul, the man didn't survive. To this day, my dad doesn't know what the man saw under that bridge, but whatever it was, it scared him to death, and my dad never wanted to know. Hi Daisy. It all started back in 2016 when my family moved into a new apartment. The few first days were pretty normal. We were just settling in and getting used to the new space. I shared the master bedroom with my sister, and my parents' room was right next door. In our room, there was a small window tucked into one corner. Across from it was our bed, and next to the bed was a table where we kept our suitcases. It was our very first night there. I woke up around 2 a.m. and turned toward the table, only to see what looked like a woman with long hair sitting on the suitcase, staring straight at me. She wasn't fully visible, more like a shadowy outline, but I could clearly feel her gaze. All I was able to do was to turn away and force myself to sleep. Unfortunately, that was only the beginning. After that night, I started waking up randomly between 2 and 3 a.m. And every time I saw her again, just standing there, watching me. The fear became too much. After a while, my mom told me to sleep in their room instead. I stayed with my parents for about 2 years. During that time, we renovated our room. After the renovation, the 2 a.m. disturbances stopped, and I was finally able to sleep peacefully. However, new experiences began to occur. I started seeing a small boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old, running through the house. One time, I was home alone, doing my hair in front of the mirror, when I saw him run past the door and into my room. I rushed to check, but no one was there. After that day, I began hearing strange noises, things moving on their own, the sound of footsteps, and even finding random scratches on my hands. I usually study at night, sitting at my desk with my back to the bed. One night, while I was deep in my work, I heard a faint sound behind me. I turned to look. A teddy bear on my bed had shifted into a completely different position and was now facing me. These strange experiences have continued. Despite regular prayers and spiritual practices in our home, the woman no longer appears, but I still see the little boy running through the rooms. I'm 16 now, and I continue to hear unexplained noises at night and wake up with scratches on my body. It wasn't just me experiencing these things. My sister had similar encounters, and even a friend who stayed with us for a day said she felt a heavy negative energy in the house and saw the same woman. I've been holding on to this story for a long time, and I finally felt ready to share it with you. So that was it for today's spooky stories. There's just something of witches, brujeria. The talk of it gives me the heebie-jeebies. If you know, you know. But if you have a spooky story that you'd like to share, definitely send it at my email, daicyspooks@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone that shared theirs. We really do appreciate it, even though we lose sleep at night. Trust me, I do. But los quiero mucho. I hope you guys are all doing amazing, and I hope to see you guys all in my next one. Bye.